So, Simon Masters reads from Elworthy Woolen Manufacturers of Westford, Wellington, 1780 to 1934. John Hagan's book. Copyright 2003, printed by the Carley Press in Wellington. Almost anybody having any connection with Wellington knows something about the Foxes and their involvement with the wool trade and the town. There's much recorded reliable material about the firm, the family, and the historic factory at Tonedale. In contrast, hardly anybody knows much about the Elworthys and the factory that they established and ran at Westford, Rockwell Green, as a family enterprise until 1890, the year when the firm was taken over by a board of directors who conducted its affairs until it ceased trading in 1934. The booklet I'm holding is intended to make the Elworthys better known than they have been, and where possible to give accurate information about them. It should not, however, be regarded as, and makes no claim to be, the final authority on conjectural matters concerning dates and locations, and where these are in doubt, that will be indicated. Westford Mill, together with Prowse's Mill, was for many years an important part of the industrial and social scene in Wellington. This book's purpose is to demonstrate that fact. That was written by Douglas Marshall, the chairman of the Wellington Museum and Local History Society. And the booklet is dedicated to Mary's memory because her grandfather was a sergeant of police at Wellington and her father was a journalist on the Wellington Weekly News. How about that? Thomas Elworthy, 1757 to 1834, his family and business. On the 17th of December 1834, Thomas Elworthy's death was reported in the Taunton Courier. This newspaper, before the founding of the Wellington Weekly News 26 years later, carried local news about Taunton and the surrounding areas. There were just 21 words in the announcement, which ran as follows. Mr. Thomas Elworthy died in Wellington, 12th of December, 1834. An old established, respectable and very considerable cloth manufacturer in that town. These words give a clear indication of how his contemporaries regarded Thomas Elworthy. Anyone who reads them can easily recognise that in his lifetime he must have been a man who made an important contribution to the welfare of his fellow townspeople. In addition, they were probably written, not submitted for publication by a member of the family, as is the modern custom, but by the editor of the Courier himself, to give public expression to what he sensed many of his readers would have felt about one who was an integral part of Wellington life for a great many years. Thomas Elworthy was a devout member of the local Baptist church, and on the tablet, which can still be seen erected there to his memory, he is described as being an honourable member and active deacon of this church. He was ardently attached to the truths of the gospel and exemplified their evidence in his life and realized their support in his death. His wife, Hannah, whom he married in late January 1782, is also commemorated. She died at the end of May 1827, having been a member of this church upwards of 40 years. So Thomas Elworthy survived his wife. They were both Baptists, and he died in 1834. More about his wife. Sorry, I'm looking for Hannah Elworthy. I was looking for her Christian name. Her maiden name was Coles. She was probably born and brought up in Wellington, but see page 11 for another possibility. Their marriage service, despite the fact that they were both members of the Baptist Church, had to be held in Wellington Parish, and on first sight that may seem somewhat surprising. But the explanation is straightforward enough. At that time, marriages could not be legally solemnized in Wellington Baptist Church, as it was not then registered for marriages. So Hannah and Thomas had really little choice but to marry according to the rites and ceremonies of the Church of England. Two of their daughters, Elizabeth and Mary, whose names are inscribed on the same tablet, died in early middle age, one before the other and just after her father. One before and the other just after her father. Mary, named a beneficiary in Elworthy's will, dated 15th of July 1834, so he kind of knew he was dying and revised his will at the last minute, maybe you could say. As one of the 5 surviving children was the wife of William Byrd of Wellington. A man of that name was a church warden of the parish church in 1796, so it seems reasonable to suggest that he may well have been her father-in-law. He could, of course, have been her husband. Though Mary was born in 1784, he would have been a good deal older than her. Another daughter, Sarah, born in 1787, married a schoolmaster probably called Sharrock, who came from Curry Rival. 2 sons, Thomas and William, were the executors. More will be written about them later on when the developments at Westford are considered. Thomas Elworthy, like his better-known contemporary Thomas Fox, became the head of the family firm of Wellington woolen manufacturers. And in one sense his achievements were perhaps even more remarkable. Elworthy started from scratch. Fox, on the other hand, for all his enterprise, business and entrepreneurial skills, was able to build up from something already well established by the Were family. But certainly it was who saw the advantages of moving the works from South Street to Tonedale, where he took over an existing corn mill and developed it. Perhaps Elworthy got the idea of the possibilities at Westford, where another corn mill was also operating, by observing what Fox was doing. There is an interesting entry in the year 1771 in Joseph Hoyland Fox's book, The Woolen Manufacture at Wellington, Somerset. Among those listed as investors in the business of Ware and Co. on the 31st of December is an Elizabeth Elworthy, who loaned a very considerable sum of £400. We know that an Elizabeth Elworthy, when she was 27, in 1760, became the second wife of Robert Ware of Runnington. What we do not know is whether she was related to Thomas Elworthy. She might have been his aunt or cousin, or indeed whether she is even the same person who invested the £400 in the Ware's business 11 years later. If she did, why is the entry in her maiden, not married name? If these Elizabeth Elworthys are different women, it is possible that although perhaps unlikely, that the one who made the loan was Thomas's mother. Now, I'm going to pause there because I've run out of patience with this rather delightfully written and illustrated history of woolen manufacture at Wellington. Because the way it's written irritates me at times, because he takes a long time to say there's two women with the same name. We can't make up whether it was his aunt or his mother or whatever, but Thomas Elworthy the Ware family were in bed with the Ware family. Can't even read that properly. The Ware family were in bed with Richard Fox in South Street, and Thomas Fox. And Thomas Fox said, no, bring the factory down to Tonedale where there's a watermill. To power the machines and to wash the wool. So that it can be spun into yarn. From a sheep's back to a pullover, or a cloth, a tweed. To be made into clothing.